Are you in a position where you're defined by your age and that's limiting you to pursue a dream or goal you want to accomplish? The More Than Your Age podcast is about having conversations with women who fully live their lives without being dictated or defined by their age. This is a space to encourage women who feel blocked to pursue a dream or goal based on their life circumstances. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast. I am your host, Erica Pazvar. Let's start living life fully and become more than your age. Well, I am so excited for our conversation today. Joining the More Than Your Age podcast is the co-founder and designer of the extraordinarily beautiful Mommy and Me clothing company, Ele Story, Judy Jou. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's so good to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify video, you can see Judy is wearing one of her beautiful dresses. If you want to back up just a little bit for everyone to see, it's just so beautiful. We are going to get to the design and your look and everything. But first, you were born and raised in Taiwan and you moved to California at the age of 10. Not knowing any English, to join your sister and your father who had been there for a year. So
Yes.
I want to know, what do you remember about leaving your home country and then spending a year away from your father and sister and then leaving your mother, knowing that she would stay behind for her career? Kind of a lot going on there.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I actually wasn't supposed to move at the age of 10. The plan for my parents was always that I would finish elementary school in Taiwan and then kind of move over just like my sister did. So my sister is 4 years older and she moved right after her 6th grade graduation. So yeah, but I visited them. I visited my sister and my dad. At the time they were living in San Jose, California. And I just remember visiting California for the first time, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And I was like, can I please come? Like, can I join you guys? And they're like, that wasn't the plan, but okay, we'll see what we could do. And so they actually expedited the process because I was so eager to come and, live in California. I don't think at the time I really knew that meant that I was going to leave my mom behind. Basically, for the rest of my adolescence, I had no idea. The plan was that I would come and then mom would join like a year or two later once, everything settled, and because she was providing financially for the family at the time. So we were like, yeah, we'll just wrap things up and then, dad's business will hopefully take off. Yeah, so it was I don't think at the age of 9 I really thought about, what that meant. But now in retrospect, it's heartbreaking. It's like, I was like, bye, mom, I'll see you soon, right? And I think, for the next 9 years of my life, or 8 years of my life, I remember just like praying every day that my family would be reunited. And that never actually happened. So,
Wow.
yeah.
When I guess the initial plan, or like you thought the plan would be your mom would come after a couple years or after a year, and then that kind of didn't happen. Was there a point where you came to realize, like, yeah, this is gonna be different than what I expected? Or were you just still hopeful, like maybe next year, the next month? Or
Mm.
do you remember kind of what you thought at that time?
I think I was very naive and was very hopeful, probably for the first 3, 4 years. And then after that, I actually went through a period of depression because I also lost my best friend when I was like my older daughter's age, around 15. My best friend suddenly died. And I think that's when like everything kind of came to this like, oh my gosh, like I don't have my mom, who I was very, very close to. And my dad, he tried, and he's a very sensitive guy, and you know, he's actually the softie. I think my mother was a disciplinarian. So, my dad did his best, but he was raising 2 girls and trying to run a business. So I honestly, I think I kind of gave up hope, like that my mother would come after about 5 years or so when I entered high school. that's when I was like, okay, this is life. And unfortunately, at a young age, I kind of had to take over, like, a lot of the responsibilities that maybe a mother would be doing, like cooking, cleaning, taking care of, like, even though I'm the younger sister, I think I just felt this like, I'm kind of a nurturer by nature, so I just wanted to take care of people. And so I ended up kind of putting a lot of it on myself to, make sure my sister was taken care of. My dad was like not, doing all the cleaning, and the gardening and all of that. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot like growing up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, dealing with the loss of your best friend is so tragic. And then your mom is on the other side of the world. What did that look like as far as communication with her? And then would you travel back and forth to Taiwan often or once in a while? How would you see her or communicate?
Yeah, so she would come, I would say like every half a year at least. My mom would visit, and then every holiday, I think we like every summer break for sure, and maybe some winters we would, my sister and I would fly back. And I do have memories of me just flying alone by myself at age 12, I think. Like I just remember like having my stuffed animal. I don't know, back then like no devices, right? Like I just had whatever I had, and I just remember traveling to see her. And I'm also extremely close to my mother's side of the family in Taiwan. Like I have cousins and aunts and uncles that I grew up with. Basically, from the age of birth to 3, my aunt actually raised me. My mother's sister actually raised me for a few years. So I'm really close to that side of the family. And so every time we would go back, I would go see them. And so it felt normal, in that sense. Like I still had family and, I would see my friends from Taiwan and kind of like write letters. It was all snail mail back then, like had like boxes and boxes of letters, like handwritten letters between me and my teachers, me and my friends. So yeah, I mean, I think we saw her as much as we could. And also back then we have fax machines. Totally dating myself, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. So my actually, for every like birthday, we would, holidays, we would draw, my sister and I are both pretty artistic, so we would like draw cards and then we would fax it over to my mom. And actually 18 years ago when she passed, when we packed up her stuff, she had like two little suitcases and one of them was just like all of our faxes, like
Oh,
kind of all faded, by then, but those were like things that she cherished. Yeah.
yeah, that's really sweet. Okay, well, I'm curious to know too. What's your dad's business?
So he did a bunch of different things. He was on the legal side. Sorry. So when he was in Taiwan, he worked on the legal side of a bank. So he had no like entrepreneur, experience, but just coming here, he tried. At one point, I think his first business was like selling these cooling fans for CPU computer. I don't know. Like I just remember like every weekend just like packing up CPU fans and then like putting, the instructions like how to install the CPU onto the fan. Like I don't even know what that is at the like right now. But yeah, me and my sister and my dad, like we were the assembly team. And then yeah, so that's what he sold. And then I think at one point he also started like a dental, like he was selling like diamond burrs for like the dentist drills or something. It's really weird. Like I think he did that for a little bit and then by the end of it he was selling some other hardware business. So I have no idea. He tried a bunch of different things and I think that's actually what he retired with was, his computer parts business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a hard worker, both coming from both parents are hard workers. Because so we talked about you were saying that you had hopes and prayed that your mom would come and stay with you all. And then at one point you just kind of gave up on that idea and realized, okay, this isn't happening. At that time, what was your view or what was your relationship like with your mother? Like you said, yeah, you went a couple times and she would come
Yeah.
visit. How did you view her during those years?
Yeah, I think it became increasingly difficult. Like I said, I was very close to her in Taiwan. And then as the years went by, I hit puberty. Like I went through a loss of a friend. She was never around. And so I think there was definitely an aspect of like resentment towards her. Like, and then, and I knew that my mother felt guilty for a lot of things. Like she would, in like just casual conversation, sometimes she would bring up like, well, you had a great childhood, didn't you? Like your aunt and your cousins, like you were so close to them. Like that was a good decision, right? I think, as I got older and I reflected back to those conversations, I realized like how much guilt she carried as a mom of not, actually raising me when I think I don't actually know the reasons that I was, raised by my aunt for a few years, but I think maybe that it was overwhelming for her. I think she already had my sister. She was only 4 at the time. Her sister really had 3 sons and really wanted a daughter. So it kind of worked out, like I was like the baby of my aunt, and I grew up with 3 boys, really, and I felt like they were my brothers. I thought I had 3 brothers. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely felt this tinge of resentment, but I think as I gotten older, I've found myself to just have the capacity to understand, why she may have made certain choices. Like, not that I would have chosen to, leave my kids and stayed working in a different country. Like, I think those were her choices. Like, I feel like she could have made it work. She could have left she was a preschool principal actually. So yeah, it was a business passed down from um, my dad's parents. So she inherited the business and and she ended up being great at it. So it was really hard for her to, just let go of that. And so, yeah, I think, I always felt a little resentful as I've gotten older, but I, loved when she would visit. But of course, by the end of, my high school years when she would come, I'd be like, we've been fine. We've been fine without you. Like, why are you here? And also at the end of, the 8, 9 years, my parents' relationship just completely deteriorated. So there wasn't really a relationship for them anymore. So it was just a little awkward by the end. And I felt bad for my dad. I felt like, like, was it worth it, coming all the way here? Like, sacrificing everything, giving up his job, giving up his marriage in a way. But yeah, I've definitely, I feel like before she passed, I've found full forgiveness for her. The last few years of her life, we saw each other a lot. I think she tried to make up for it by the end of her life. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Thank you for sharing all of that because I know that that's probably not easy to be open about that. Something I want to talk about too, when you first moved here, your English was limited and you shared with me that you were teased a lot for your English or lack thereof. I'd love to know the steps that you took to be able to learn the language and then be at the top of your class like you were previously, because that's hard.
Yeah. I think that I'm naturally a very competitive person. I always have been. I think, it probably has to do with, obviously my upbringing. So my dad's side especially, my dad had 9 siblings. So I have a lot of cousins, a lot. A lot of them. So my dad's the youngest of 10. And his like I would say 7 of his siblings actually immigrated to the States like decades before him. So my, uncles and aunts were all settled, you know, throughout the United States, like not in necessarily Asian populated states, like somewhere in the Midwest, somewhere on the East Coast. So I have a lot of cousins that don't actually speak Chinese. And I remember growing up, like even at the age of 6, I think that was the very first time my parents took us to the United States to visit some of these relatives of ours. And, it was like charades with like I would do hand gestures because couldn't communicate with my cousins. But sorry, so the story is so many of my cousins were really accomplished and most of them actually got into Ivy League schools for college. And so I had kind of that, like, I'm not saying it was like a dark cloud, but it was like my dad would bring up like, "Oh, so and so just got into Harvard, and oh, so and so became a doctor. Like, don't you want to be a doctor?" you know? And so at the age of 9, I remember our family trips because I grew up in Northern California, so our occasional like family trips, my dad would be like, "Oh, let's drive to Stanford, and see like it's only 30 minutes away." And let's go to Berkeley. Like it was like a very kind of indirect way of my dad saying, like, I expect you to
Yeah.
do really well because you have all these cousins ahead of you, right? And so it was, yeah, I think it was this pressure, but like for me, became a really good motivator. Like, because even in Taiwan, I remember my very first, we had like finals and midterms in first grade. And I remember, yeah, it's pretty intense. And then they rank you from 1 to 40 something.
Wow.
6. I remember we have 46 classmates because I remember the guy that got number 46 for his test, and I felt so bad. Like,
Yeah.
they publicize, they're like, "Number 1 is so and so." And I remember my first midterm, I was like number 2 or 3, and the number 1 guy was like, "Oh my goodness, like, I'm smarter than you." And I'm like, "No, you're not." So ever since then, I think I just became very competitive, like, at a young age, and I just never let people tell me that I can't. And so I remember after that, like, I was, like, number 1. Like, I made sure I was number 1, you know? And so coming here, and not knowing the language, like, I literally didn't know how to put sentences together. I remember I had to take a test for my English abilities, and it was, like, 3 words, like, "The car blew," and I didn't know how to, like, structure that sentence, and I basically, failed the test, but, so I was in the ESL class for 4th grade, and then I think part of 5th, and then by 6th grade, I went to a regular, like, non-ESL program elementary school that was near my house, and I just remember, yeah, being teased by other ESL students, which is really terrible. They were teasing me in, like, broken English, Like, now that I think back, like, it didn't even make sense what they were saying to me, but I just was, like, fired up. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're not better than me," Like, and so I don't know, I felt like I always had this competitive nature, and I didn't let people tell me that I couldn't do something, and so within year and a half, I was out of ESL, but that also meant, I was pulling all-nighters in 6th grade. I remember I had an amazing 6th grade teacher because I went to a school that was, like, really I mean, it was like a top elementary school in my city, and that's why my dad moved to that house, because the elementary school was, like, behind our house. It was walking distance, and he heard it was good, and so, but thankfully, I had a really great 6th grade teacher, and every day she'd look at me, and she'd be like, "Did you get any sleep? You have dark eye circles. Like, how many hours of sleep did you get?" And I was like, "I literally didn't sleep." And it was because I had for every, like, assignment I would get, every single word was like a foreign word. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't get through, like, the first, um, couple sentences without looking up every single word. And so I remember my dad would, like, sit next to me, and then we have, like, a yellow notepad, and then I would just, like, write down every single vocabulary. And then back then, you had a real dictionary, so we look up every single word. And then that's how I would understand what the textbook said. And I did that for, like, a whole year in
Wow.
6th grade. And I think I couldn't even pass my PE class. Like, it was so, I mean, I'm not super athletic, but it wasn't because of my, lack of athletic abilities that I think I was getting like a C or D in PE, and that really made me angry. But it was because, like, there was a written basketball test, and it was like, if somebody is, like, dribbling and walking, like, what is that, And I was like, what is that? Like, I didn't even know, like, dribbling. Like, I didn't understand the terms. And I remember, like, telling my teacher, I was like, "I can't understand the test." Like, and then I think my dad actually played basketball in college, and then he was like, "Oh, let me teach you how to dribble. Let me teach you, like, how to do a layup." So we would practice, like, on the weekends so that I could pass a layup test. And then, like, we then asked the PE teacher to give me like a 5th grade level, written test. And then that's how I passed. And so it was, I remember like it was really hard in 6th grade. And then it got a lot easier after that. It was still like a couple more years, I think, of, just like having to, get up to speed and then having to work, 4 times harder than my classmates. But yeah, it was a lot of pressure. And it definitely contributed to like my depression, like later a few years in, like to my like I said, I became very depressed in junior high, and that's when I lost my best friend. And I think it was like academic pressure, and then it was, the loss of a really good friend.
Yeah, a lot going on at that time. And the whole, family stuff too. Like that's just a lot. But that, that says a lot about you at that very young age to pull all-nighters because you had this competitive spirit about you and you really wanted to work hard, but you wanted to learn the language, you wanted to do really well. You could have easily just been like, just give me the easy stuff, like whatever, I'm just going to kind of coast. But you had there's something within you, that the spirit of determination and this grit at this super young age, which led you all the way to your dream school, which was Northwestern University. My sister-in-law went there too. We can talk about that later. And my brother-in-law
Oh,
went to Stanford. So I'm like, hey, we got kind of near you a little bit. But anyway, so you majored in fine arts due to your love for fabrics and fashion, and you ended up creating your own major combining theater, costume design, and art for your degree. So I kind of want to hear about your love for art. And you mentioned too that you and your sister both loved it. You would draw and like send these faxes to your mom.
yeah.
But tell me how that developed into fashion, like you said, from your aunt and as a young teenager through college.
Yeah. So my aunt, it's actually my third aunt, my dad's sister, and she never married, and she was an art teacher and an artist, like a full-time artist, and she actually published, art books in Taiwan. And she would, teach classes in her studio. And at one point, I think it was more for my sister. Like she was, like I said, 4 years older. And my sister had this like love for art as well. And because she was older, my aunt was like, hey, why don't you, I have a Saturday class. Why don't you bring the girls over? Little sister could just watch, hang out, whatever. And so I was like the little tag along. Like it wasn't a class for me, but my aunt would just be like, oh, well, here, you can do some exercises. And the way that my aunt, I remember very vividly, like the kinds of, art exercises she would give me. And I actually do that with my younger daughter right now because it's really fun. Like, so she would basically give us a list of like weird shapes, that she would do with a marker. And then we had to come up with as many variations of things that you could create with that shape as possible. So like I got really good at, like imagining like what could this be? And I feel like, and then later on in life too, like I would take ceramics and I took Chinese calligraphy in my elementary school. They offered it to like first graders, and I would do that. I would do pottery like ahead of before school started. And, I always just had so much fun doing it. And then also growing up in Taiwan, like my grandma actually lived with us, and then this is my mom's mom. She lived with us for many years. And, grandma and I would like so little, I don't know. She was really good at fixing everybody's clothes. So she would be like, oh, I need to sew on a button, or I need to like patch this. And I would be like, Grandma, like, how do you use a needle? Like, can you teach me? And so we hung out a lot. And so grandma would be like, okay, here's how you thread a needle. And I would help her thread a needle. And then we also watched a lot of TV, like, cause my parents were busy. Grandma and I would watch like these sort of like period pieces, period soap operas from Taiwan. So it's like based in ancient China. And people would have these like flowy gowns with like really beautiful hair, like, made into, I don't know, just like different hairdos and like long flowy sleeves. And I remember back in Taiwan, there were these like, people would get, for some weird reason, people gifted like soap. That was like really special. And the soap would be like nested into these satin lined boxes, right? So like it would be like, I don't know if they had it in the States, but I wasn't here. But I would like tear out the satin fabric and I would like sew it into like a sleevelet for myself. And I would just like dance around like I was one of the characters in the show. And so that was like my very early introduction to fabrics. And, then my mom would get me like stuffed animals, dolls, and I would be like, oh, I want to make clothes for them. And then I would take like, and my sister had Barbies, and I have a whole other story. I tore up her Barbie dress, and she got so mad because I was so curious about all the layers that went under her Barbie gown. And so I would like study it and I would like cut it out, like, oh, I like this ruffle. And she'd be like, where did that come from? And I would get in so much trouble. Like, anyway, yeah, so I've just had this fascination with fabrics. And so early on, my mother recognized that. And so when she would buy me dolls and I would dress up Barbies using what I had. So like I would take like socks that were worn that had the lace trim, around the ankles. I would take that and I made like an off-shoulder gown for my Barbie, like I would just do that for fun. So my mom would basically at a young age would start to take me to the fabric district in Taiwan and she would buy me like I remember this like yard of lace that she got me and I like dressed up my panda, like my stuffed panda, and then Panda was getting married to Bunny. So like I would like this whole like wedding ceremony for them just with like one piece of fabric. And then I would always, while we were out, like I would pick up like shiny objects from the ground, from just the street. Like I remember this like metallic ruffle that I found. And my mom's like, that's dirty. Like put it back. And I'm like, no, I could totally wash this and use it on my Barbie. Like I was like obsessed with fabrics and how they felt and how they draped. And so, yeah, it was kind of hard. Like my dad, honestly, was like, you're going to Northwestern. That's a really good school. What are you going to major in? Right. And I'm like, I mean, I'm undecided, I tried really hard to be undecided for him because honestly, I just wanted to study art.
Yeah.
But, and then I actually took a sewing class in my senior year of high school. And that was like the beginning of my love affair with like constructing clothing with a sewing machine. Cause before that I was hand sewing everything. And, my dad was like, okay, you already gone to college. Sure. You could take the sewing class, like it didn't matter anymore. But I was like, no, but I love this stuff. Like more, I want more of this. But I got to school and I was basically undeclared. And then I was like, I'm just gonna take, a few art classes, like I've never done art class, like official art classes. But then as a freshman, it was actually really hard to take some of the art classes that were reserved for seniors or like reserved for art majors. So I was like, oh, I guess, I have to like get the art major so I could take these classes. I felt like I was like explaining to my dad and like reassuring him that I was not going to just study art. And he was like, okay. But, then I was like, oh, Dad, don't worry. I'm doing this art major, but like I've got this education degree on the side. So the least I could be is like an art teacher, right? And so he's like, okay, as long as you're going to like do something with your degree, like that's great. And then halfway through, right before my teaching practicum, because I was going to be able to teach secondary school, so like high school. And I was like, I look so young, like for, my age, like people aren't going to take me seriously. And I was like, and do I even really have a passion for teaching, And I like kind of basically talked my way out of the practicum. So I dropped out of my teaching practicum, like right before junior year. And my dad was like, so you're just going to be an art major? Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'll figure it out. Don't worry. Like, I'm passionate. I don't know. I understand like now,
Yeah.
like why my dad was, because it did take me a long time to figure out like what I wanted to do with my art. Like it really took me a long time. So he was worried, rightfully so, but yeah.
I love the story where you're like, okay, Dad, yeah, I'm going to take a class here and there. Okay, I'm going to just study this because it's, and he's like, okay, yeah. And then it's my degree. This is what my degree is in. And now your whole profession. And I think it's so cute, like so sweet in your story of just like really a young age. I mean, this passion of what you're doing now was really I mean, just a part of you from so young with your Barbies and your
Yeah.
pandas, and like I just think that that's really really sweet. And then that kind of that bonding time that you got to have with your grandma. I want to just share a little bit with the listeners, kind of where what a little bit of your trajectory, and then kind of want to go to where a little bit to where you are now. So to let everyone know, so you pursued, then eventually you pursued your Master's of Fine Arts in Costume Design at UCLA, and you worked in theater costume design in LA, and then you worked for Pixar, which is really cool. And for those of us not in California, anything that has to do with the movies, we're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And people in California are probably like, it's just a business. It's just a job.
Yeah.
But anyway, so back to your story. So you finally found a steady job to pay the bills. And we talked a little bit around the same time you lost your mother, and she had come back into your life as an adult, and you were able to just build that relationship again and have a very special relationship. And you had to go through immense grief again. And you shared with me that while you were working at Pixar, there was something that kept coming up regarding what your mother would think about you and your pursuit of your own creative arts. What
Yeah.
was it that kept coming up?
So for me, I had already planned on moving to the Bay Area, because I was finishing, I had just graduated from grad school in Los Angeles. And then I also got married young. So I got married 2004. And then 2 years after I got married, I finished my master's degree. So my husband and I were very poor. Like we had no money, but thankfully we had no kids to support, right? So we were just like scraping by, and I had like 3 jobs. I mean, I was tutoring math. Did I tell you that?
No.
Um, I'm not even good at math, but I was able to help my F student get like a B, like
That's
I'm
good.
sufficient. But I was working retail. I mean, and my husband kept saying, when you get a real job, I'm like, I have real jobs. Like they're taking all of my time. And it was hard. So yeah, when I got I actually interviewed for the position at Pixar while I was wrapping up on my final stage show. And I didn't know if I was gonna get it. I thought maybe just like not really gonna happen. And if not, I'll just figure something out in LA. But my husband happened to have quit his job in LA, and we decided to move up to the Bay Area. So I had no idea at that point, like how I was going to continue my work in LA. But I did do it. I commuted for a whole year, San Francisco to LA, like weekly. It was horrible. I love my boss, but it was horrible, like just the drive. And then, so actually, it was during one of those, you know, seasons. I was like, this is a lot. I kind of need to just get a job in the Bay Area. So I tried it, and I felt like, so then sorry, the timeline's all a little bit weird. So right before I moved to the Bay Area, my mother passes away. And I'm like, I hadn't gotten the Pixar job yet, but I was trying. I had gotten a phone interview. So I was like, okay, maybe. So anyway, I think I was really excited to take the job because I love Pixar, right? Like I'd never thought with my training and background that I would ever be considered for a job at a animation company. I mean, it's like not what I studied, and actually I have a friend who's still there who I did his thesis film over a summer, and we had an amazing time. Like it was just amazing. Amazing crew, amazing cast. And I did costumes for his film. And I remember one of the like breaks that we were hanging out. He was at Pixar already. He has started already. And he was like, Pixar is great. Like I think you would like it. I'm like, yeah, but I studied costume design. Like, is there anything there for, costume designers? He's like, I don't know, but I would maybe, I would bet, there needs to be some kind of, because, there's cloth simulation, there's obviously character design, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I mean, I think, there might be something there. So that was it. Like that was our conversation. And then a couple years later, I applied, and I didn't even tell him, even though I knew he was there. But I think he kind of planted that seed. Like I would like that culture. I would like the people there. So when I got offered the job. I was an assistant to an art director on Toy Story 3, and my job was so cool. Like I still think that that was the coolest job ever because it was a hybrid job, meaning it was both creative and management. Like it was project management and creative. So, and after I was in that role, they got rid of that role. So was the last person to actually have this amazing role, because I'm also super organized and I can, wrangle people and whatever. So I was able to do my job really well. But what I love was, providing, basically my job was to take photos and create these packets of like texture reference, color reference, how like distressed like a toy should look or how new it should look. Like that was my job. It was like I was shooting like playgrounds, like, oh, this playground is like a little bit distressed, like, but not, we don't want the metal to be rusty yet. Like, I mean, I was basically doing like real life set design or costume design, but like in a digital format. So it was really fun. I really
Cool.
liked it. And I learned a lot from my cube mate because at the time of my interview, they're like, "Do you know Photoshop?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I know Photoshop." But in reality, I had only learned to copy and paste, um, and put some text on some like costume reference. And I learned how to scan my drawing in because I had a director that lived in New York and wanted to see like my inspiration. So I didn't know how else to send him this stuff except like by doing it in Photoshop. And so that was like literally the only skill that I had. And little did I know, I actually needed more than knowing how to copy and paste and put text on pictures. But my cube mate, I won't name him because, yeah, I don't know where he is right now. It was like this computer genius, Photoshop genius, and every lunch hour I'd be like, "Hey, how do I do this? Like, can you show me? I'm supposed to mask this layer? Like, what is that?" And then he would come over, show me in like 20 seconds, and I learned everything on my job from this cube mate that I had.
Wow.
And somehow I was able to like turn in my stuff on time and my supervisor didn't know that I didn't have any of the skills to do it. So it was awesome. Like it was so much learning, but I was like able to do it after I learned how to, all the tips and tricks in Photoshop. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's really neat.
I don't think I answered the question though, Erica.
No, that's okay. Well, the question was, I wanted to know when you were working there, you just kept thinking about what your mother would be saying to you.
Sorry, I go on these tangents. I so when I accepted the job and obviously love my job, I think there was this like nagging. It wasn't a negative thought. It was like, would mom be happy knowing that I quit costume design? Because she was still alive when I was pursuing my master's. And in fact, like I share so much of my design process with her. Like whenever I'd be stuck, I'm like, Mom, I need help. Like, can you talk me through this character? And she would be there, she'd be like, well, tell me more. And where is he from? And she would help me process things. And I remember she would always say, like, I know it's really hard, but you got this. Like you can figure it out. Like you're smart, you're creative, you got this. And so I think there was this like kind of unresolved like this emotion that I had because I chose to go somewhere else after she passed. And I always thought, what would mom think of it? And I thought I think mom would be happy, that I'm happy because that's all she cares about. But as I progressed in the company, as I got promoted within the company, like I said, like my hybrid art, creative and production role was no longer, right? So my path was actually to become a production manager. So it became less and less artistic. And I tried to stay with the artist. Like I would fight to be in the art department. I fought to be in the story department. Like I tried to stay with, I mean, everybody at Pixar honestly is like a creative, but the technical departments were like a lot harder for me. Like, oh, you're doing coding and that's cool, but I couldn't relate. It didn't resonate with me at all. And so there was this nagging thought like, okay, I think there is something that I'm not like, maybe down the line I'll come back to doing something creative for myself again. But yeah, so I think that was the thought like that kept coming up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I think, I mean, I just love to, like, there's you, well, I think it's funny how you got the position and you're like, yeah, I do Photoshop. And then your coworker, you're using, he's training you on the at lunch like 20 seconds, and that's how you learn. Your supervisor didn't know. If your former supervisor listens to this, he or
Yeah.
she will know now.
Yes.
But that's okay. So, okay, so I want to, just for time's sake, I kind of want to flash forward to your husband at one point ended up losing his job, and he had asked you if you wanted to start your own business. And because you also had your first daughter, and you would sew and you would create, the blankets and everything, and you're very talented. And so obviously there's this gift, and you would do these craft fairs from Pixar, and people loved what you were doing. And so when your husband said, "Hey, we should start this business," what did you think when he asked you this?
I said he was crazy. I was like, "You are crazy. There's no way I didn't study I didn't study fashion." He's like, "Why are you so afraid?" I'm like, "I'm not afraid. I just didn't, I was like very like I think I was scared. I was scared because I'm like that's just no one does that. I mean, I should have studied fashion then. Like why did I go to the school and so I had I had a lot of concerns. And he's the optimistic, like, dreamer. And so he almost doesn't know when there's a limit to his dreams. So knowing that about him, I told him he was crazy. And he kind of was. But he also said, well, I know what corporate job is. I can always get it when I need to, but I have this 7 months of severance. So why don't we just pretend that I have a job for the next 7 months and let's try to get this thing. Like, he's like, do you want to start something? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. And at the time, I was actually making handbags. I was sewing totes and selling them through my work and Etsy and, just for fun and occasional like big baby things that I would sew for my daughter. And he's like, well, what's the biggest obstacle though for you? Like for you to, because I said, he's like, I remember you wanted a clothing line, like you wanted your own fashion brand. I'm like, oh no, that was just fun to talk about, like, yeah, that's never gonna happen. And he was like, what if I could make it happen? Like, what do you need? Like what's holding you back? I'm like, I don't have any time to like I have a full-time job and a baby. Like
Yeah.
how is this possible? And he said, well, let me do the legwork. And he basically found just randomly some other people in the clothing business. At the time, they were in children's fashion business as well. He interviewed them. He found out where the factories were, like all the sewing factories, really tiny. They're really like sewing houses in the Bay Area. And he figured out all the vendors we would need because I'm like, I don't know how to draft patterns. Like I know basic drafting, but I don't know how to grade. Like, how do you even get different sizes out of the basic pattern? He's like, oh, I'll figure that out. So he found all the vendors that we would need to do it because he had actually found the factory that would sew my bags. But then I was like, he's like, you don't look too happy. Like, because we had gotten all the fabrics for the bags, like delivered to the door. And he's like, you don't seem that excited. I'm like, because I hate bags. Like, they're, me, I'm not a bag person, but I love dresses, I love jackets. And he's like, okay, well, why don't we do that? So we returned all the fabrics and like ended up launching a clothing business. And yeah, so it was like 6 months of like pushing and hustling and yeah, getting a line off the ground.
That's amazing. I also love too just the fact that your husband, he sees this passion in you, this gifting in you, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna make this happen. Like you said you wanted to do this, we're gonna make this happen, and it's gonna work."
Yeah.
And that's really sweet and special that
Mhm.
he cares that much about your gifting, and he's like coming alongside of you to kind of lift you up in what you're talented in, and then he's using his gifts as well to kind of make it work.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear you share a little bit about when you launched and how you guys came up with the brand name and your logo and then your collections and just the beauty of your work that you have?
Yeah. So I really wanted, so when we first started, it was just children's clothing, no mommy and me. So I just remember, I wanted to honor my mom in some way. And I remember this song that she would sing to me about an elephant being asked, like, why is your nose so long? And the elephant responded, like, my nose is what makes me, my mom tells me that my nose is what makes me beautiful. And I've just always loved that song. I would sing it to my daughter when she was a baby. And so I thought elephant story, like, but short. So I made it Ele Story. My husband's like, are you sure you want the ELE? Like, that's going to be hard to pronounce. I'm like, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Let's just, and I remember just thinking, well, they're like, kind of like for little kids. Back then, I only went up to size 6 or 8. And so, I just like drew a logo and I had like limited Photoshop ability. So I drew it, I put it in Photoshop, and then I actually had an art director friend that like helped me to clean it up. Like I was really good friends with a lot of my coworkers and they're like, oh, let me help you out. So I had a little bit of help but I hand drew the logo and I knew I needed to launch in 6 months. So I literally did it in like 2, 3 days. Like I just journaled, wrote about what the significance of the elephant was to me. And then we just kind of went with that logo. We didn't rebrand till 2017, till we were like officially Mommy and Me. And that's when we added the mommy elephant. And then I had actually a graphic designer from Pixar, my friend. She's not there anymore, but yeah, we've remained friends and she's done all my logos and all my like, postcards and things, like she's designed them. So yeah, that's kind of how it came together. And then the inspiration for my first line, I was always really drawn to really simple Japanese children's fashion. And I had some like sewing books at the time that I would just look at. And I think that gave me a lot of ideas. I wanted it to be just very simple and very like, just, yeah, I think simplicity was my goal and like that childhood innocence and the colors. Like I love mixing and matching prints and different colors. And I think a lot of that came from my costume design background, seeing everything come together on stage with the characters on stage and how that worked with the set. And so I'm always thinking in like a group. Like I'm never thinking individual pieces. I like to think like as a collection.
Well, and they're just so, so beautiful. I want to know too, did you ever, I mean, you said you had 6 months to kind of just like get everything up and
Mhm.
going and finalize everything. After the 6 months, were there ever moments where you just thought, like, can we just stop this and I go back to the study? Because entrepreneurship is hard and income, varies. Were there moments of wanting to quit or
Oh,
how'd
yeah.
that go down?
Yeah, like all the time. Like you can call me any day of the week. Well, no, I stuck with my corporate job, my Pixar job for a year while I was doing my trying to get Ellie Story up. And then it came to a head like I was spending all my lunch hours overseeing production. I was barely eating. Like I wasn't like spending my work hours doing my Ellie Story work, but I would take lunch, right? Like I would like have an hour to drive to Oakland and like give him some notes and then come back. And it was just like a lot. Like I
Yeah.
felt like my brain was just splitting a lot. And yeah, I definitely, yeah. But then so when I have to say it was the hardest thing to leave Pixar because of how much I loved the people. It was really, really hard. But everyone, like my manager, that I told that I was quitting, he was like trying to promote me. He was like, hey, let's do this. What do you think? Let me go to Disneyland. I'll come back in 3 days and I'll tell you what I decide. And I came back and I was like, Nick, like, I'm still really good friends with him. And I said, Nick, I'm actually gonna leave. He's like, wait, what? Like my department? Or I'm like, no, I'm leaving. Like I'm gonna quit Pixar and I'm gonna try to give my clothing business a try. And he was like, oh my gosh. He called me JJ, right? Like, I don't know. I had a nickname for some reason. He was like, so happy for you. Like, let's throw you a party. He gave me the nicest
Yeah.
farewell party. And it was so hard to leave. And But, I felt like really blessed to be able to leave on good terms and, loving the job that I loved and, and then like doing the scary thing. But yeah, like because I'm such a extrovert, it's really hard to go from being around like teammates all the time and like eating lunch with everybody, hanging out, having, to like, here I am by myself, and then my husband actually went back to work. So he was not around. And so I felt very, very lonely and it was very, very hard. I was like one woman team from customer service to shipping to marketing to designing to overseeing production to packing. I mean, it was everything. I had to do everything. And then we were running craft fairs too on the weekends with our little girl. Like we would stash her somewhere with grandparents or friends for like 8 hours, like to do a show. There was definitely moments when I just like, I can't do this. Like I physically cannot do this. But then I thought, well, we've come a long way. We were received so well, like at our trade shows. And even though we got out of the trade shows, I knew that Ele Story had a shot. And I knew that what I had was something special and that if I gave up, like now, like any moment, like I wouldn't be able to see it come to fruition. So I think it was that like belief that it could go somewhere that kept me going.
Yeah.
Um,
That's huge. Well, and I even think too, like, okay, I didn't realize you were still at Pixar when you first launched. So you're working full-time job, driving to LA from San Francisco. You also have a newborn, or I don't know how old your baby was at the time.
it was 18 months and actually my commute had ended because I already took the job at Pixar. Yeah, so I was
Okay.
just driving from San Francisco to Emeryville, which is not bad. I
Okay.
crossed.
Well, still.
Yeah, yeah,
Still,
so
you were working full time. You have an 18-month-old. And I mean, my youngest right now is 15 months. And I'm just like, wow, she's a lot of work too, and just trying to do everything. And then I mean, I just even think about like uh, that, that reconciliation you had with your mother, but also I know that that's like a very important time of wanting her there as well. And this you should be so excited for you and all of this and I mean, there's just so much going on. I love that you just said I have to, like, I believe so much in this and I'm going to continue to push forward and do this because I see the beauty in it and I see the value in it. And I mean, and you're a success story in it too. And that you're like, yeah, I wanted to quit, but I didn't quit. I want to know too. I'm going to try to move us along and ask. I have one more question, and then I'm going to ask my last question just for time's sake to honor you and your time. Do you remember your very first when you were officially Ele Story?
my very first yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, gosh, I think that's a really good question. I think it was actually just going out. Oh, okay. So I would say that my husband really wanted to get out of the trade shows, and I was really scared because I was like, we've got 40 something boutiques like ordering from us. Why are we walking away from that? Like just after one season. Like, I'm like, are you crazy? I'm like, yes, you are crazy. And he's like, trust me. He's like, I want you to trust me. We are going to be better off being more sustainable because we were making everything in San Francisco and Oakland. It was really expensive. We were making barely $5 per dress doing wholesale. And he looked at the big picture. He's like, there's no way. Like, we're not going to make it. So he's like, can you trust me? And let's get out. And that's just like try to do direct to consumer. Like, I'm going to figure out ads. I'm like, you're crazy, but okay. And I'm so scared to tell these stores, because I had some relationship already after 2 seasons. I had some friends in the boutiques and I had to write them like, we're so sorry, but we're not going to do this anymore. And that was my first yes. I guess it was like a no and a yes, right?
Yeah.
But it was absolutely the right decision. Yeah.
Wow. Man, your husband. Good. I mean, I love too that you're just like, okay, you're crazy, but I'm going to trust you in this, and you make it work. Judy, how old were you when you first launched Ele Story, or when your husband said, "Hey, let's start the business"?
Yeah. So I had my daughter at 29, 30s. I was 32. I was
Okay.
30.
Okay. So 32. So some people would be like, oh my gosh, I'm 32. Like I've missed it. And then others are like, oh, 32 is so young. Regardless, the whole show is about our age and being more than that silly little number and being more than a life circumstance that we're given. And it's so easy to have this passion and this desire that we see like can be successful, but we may not believe it in ourselves, but maybe somebody else sees it in us, like your husband did and your mom. And I know you had other family members as well. And so what I'd love to have you do, if you could encourage one woman who does feel blocked or limited to pursue a dream or a goal based on her age or a life circumstance, what would you say to her?
I would say that your life circumstances are not going to be there permanently, and that your age, you're only going to get older, right? And these limitations that you tell yourself, because I do that too. I'm 44 now. I'm going to turn 45 this year. And that's scary. Like, I'm like, what am I doing next? Like, am I going to keep going? Right. I think those are things that you tell yourself that are limiting beliefs. I think that if you believe in something, if this idea keeps coming up, if this thing keeps, nagging at you, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? Or wouldn't it be kind of amazing? Like, if I could try that, right? Like, I think, yeah, if you have those things, like, there's no reason why you can't do it. And yeah, I mean, I come from a place of like, I almost lost my life several years ago when I had my first miscarriage. And I remember passing out and being like, this is it. And in that moment, like split second, I was like, am I happy with my life? Like, am I satisfied? Do I have any regrets? And I remember in that moment, I was like, no, I'm ready to go. If this is my time, like, and I was like 30 something, like I was young, but I was like, yeah, I don't have any regrets because I've tried everything that I wanted to try. So I think that's like really shifted my perspective. I think it's like, you just never know, like when you're gonna go. And I hope that, in that moment, if you know that your life is gonna end, like that you have that peace, that you've really done everything, that you've lived your life the way that you wish. So that's,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that answer. That's great. Well, Judy, would you also share where people can find your beautiful clothing and see you on the socials? Plug away.
Yeah. So we're online only. So it's elestory.com, ELE story.com. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram, Ele Story. We actually have a TikTok account, but I need my my daughter to help me. Actually, she doesn't have any social, but she watches a lot of TikTok. So she's like, Mommy, you need to put this on TikTok. So I'm like, okay, that's my next project. And, even, yeah, like we're on Pinterest as well. I know a lot of moms like to, pin outfit ideas for their birthday parties and things and holiday gatherings. So yeah, thank you so much, Erica.
Yes, absolutely, Judy. I appreciate your honesty and vulnerability because you did share a lot of things that are hard and you were very raw. And I just have loved the trajectory of your story so far. There's still so much more, Lord willing, to come. And everyone needs to check out Ele Story. It's beautiful. I was showing my husband the other day and I was like, I need this. I need all of these. And he's like, okay, well, you're crazy. So he's the one that says, you're crazy to me. But Judy Jou, thank you so much for joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to talk with you, Erica.
Likewise.
Okay, bye.
If you were encouraged by today's episode, like and subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. You can find me on all of the socials at More Than Your Age. Keep striving for your goals, live fully, and we'll catch you next time on the More Than Your Age podcast.